Good morning, Tubaneros. In 1956, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev famously said to Western diplomats, "History is on our side. We will bury you." That is the message being served up to Greece today by international finance capital. But it's not just Greece. Capitalism is saying it to all of us. The banker, the broker, the big investor are all saying to us, "We are the end of history, you're just its ass, and we're here to kick it. We are the only ones who matter. Your life, your history, your culture, your desires and needs, hopes and dreams, all mean nothing unless it profits us. We'll bury them first before we bury you." Greece is just the one stepping up to the plate, to use American sports analogies. But Azov, if Greece had lived within its means, if it hadn't used bank loans to fund extravagance, like government worker pensions, hadn't been trapped by its own clientelist political culture, it wouldn't have dropped into Greece, would it? Well, you don't make money, if you're a banker, by people living within their means. You need to get them to want more, to get into debt to you to get it. So you entice them with easy loans, easy credit. You sucker them into subprime home mortgages without credit checks or government regulation. You sucker others into buying these through junk bond tricks like collateralized debt obligations. You loan governments easy money for Olympic stadiums, high-speed rail lines, patronage handouts. And then you just sit back in your high-rise, air-conditioned suite and wait for the bubble to burst, for the house of cards that you handcrafted as a cynical joke to fall in under its own preposterous weight. So then, like any good vulture, you can descend on the dying victim and gorge yourself on his bloated flesh. And that's what Deutsche Bank and the IMF are, evil, stinking, fucking vultures. Angela Merkel is just a testosteroneless Hitler. No mustaches needed in modern financial fascism. Control is gained through dependency, which seems benign until crisis hits. Then it shows its true face. Asset stripping, privatization, hostile financial takeover. The trap is sprung and the people are to pay for debts that their opportunist leaders were suckered into signing for. The real question asked by many is, was this crisis planned? Well, it was no conspiracy per se, but a systemic working out of the neoliberal agenda, economically and politically. Subordinate national sovereignty to the interests of capital, removing barriers to the free flow of capital, which also serve as protections from these financial rapists. Everything that these banker whoremasters demand that Greece discard are the very social institutions, regulations, and subsidies that protect the working and consuming majority from the wolf at the door. The door is to be thrown open and the wolf is to be free to help himself down to gnawing on their bones. And they are legally prohibited from defending their home because the crafty wolf has transferred its equity and its ownership to his own den. The European Central Bank and its board has no need to huff and puff and blow down the houses of Ireland, Portugal, and Greece to eat the three little pigs. Not even to disguise himself as grandma before jumping on underage Red Riding Hood in Athens and fucking her in the mouth and ass. This kind of confederal system is exactly what American libertarians and conservatives alike have in mind by dismantling the federal state and leaving the American public at the mercy of the free flow of exchange value with no regulation, no deposit insurance, no lender of last resort, a ruling gold standard without a Federal Reserve. Well, the Wall Street of Europe has authored a Mein Kampf, an outline of its grand strategy of financial imperialism in Greece. The Memorandum of Understanding that the Greek Parliament has signed onto is calculating, mercenary, and the work of vultures. Just read the fucker and its benchmarks. The manifesto of the 1%. 10% cuts to government workers' wages, to Social Security and hospitals, privatizing public assets, even forcing them to import baby food, all of which is designed to reduce GDP and never allow it to recover. Take a peek at its privatization proviso. Just as Naomi Klein wrote in the Shock Doctrine, this crisis is exploited to grab vital state assets and redistribute them to corporate clients. On privatization, the government stands ready to offer for sale its remaining stakes in state-owned enterprises if necessary in order to reach the privatization objectives. Public control will be limited only to cases of critical network infrastructure. There's clientelism for you. Just read this. The government will neither propose nor implement measures which may infringe the rules on the free movement of capital. Neither the state nor other public bodies will conclude shareholder agreements with the intention or effect of hindering the free movement of capital or influence the management or control of companies. The government will neither initiate nor introduce any voting or acquisition caps, and it will not establish any disproportionate and non-justifiable veto rights for any other form of special rights in privatized companies. Pretty obvious there. Forget your sovereignty, capital rules. Corporations are people, after all, like the Nazi conquerors of World War II. Special people with special rights. that take precedence over you untermensch and your puny desires. There's also a stretch on growth-enhancing structural reforms, which doesn't bother explaining how an economy can grow when its bones are being picked to the very marrow. By reducing consumer spending and business investment, the European Central Bank is all about starving the people to harvest its pound of flesh, just as it earlier encouraged them to feed their faces to have flesh to harvest. Given that the outcome of the social dialogue to promote employment and competitiveness fell short of expectations, the government will take measures to foster a rapid adjustment of labor costs to fight unemployment and restore cost competitiveness. Ensure the effectiveness of recent labor market reforms, align labor conditions in former state-owned enterprises to those in the rest of the private sector, and make working hours arrangements more flexible. This strategy should aim at reducing nominal unit labor costs in the business economy by 15% in 2012-2014. At the same time, the government will promote smooth wage bargaining at the various levels and fight undeclared work. Don't you think that after already recommending policies resulting in a 2-year recession to high record rate unemployment, in Greece it's over 20%, the Eurobanksters should keep their lying lips shut, at least admit they haven't the faintest fuck of a clue as to what the shit they're talking about? No, not our arrogant Herrenvolk of the master investing race. The memorandum goes on to blabber about the business environment, such as cease to earmark the non-reciprocating charge calculated on the fuel price in favor of mutual distribution fund of the oil pump operators of liquid fuel. Ka-ching! More free flesh for the corporate Eurovultures. All of this is just one corporate handout after another. All of Europe is to be plundered and pillaged like the former East Germany, with Greece the first course on the plate for this generation. In the words of Kostas Hatzidakis, a conservative member of the Greek parliament, we are facing destruction. Our country, our home, has become ripe for burning. The center of Athens is in flames. Reading on in the occupier's memo, implementation of Law 3982/2011 on the fast-track licensing procedure for technical professions, manufacturing activities, and business parks, and other provisions. What does this have to do with debt restructuring? Not a friggin' thing. But it shows the true face of the Memorandum of Understanding. Understand that it's a Pharisee, pseudo-moral, punitive rip-off of the worker to enrich the bottom line of his temple of finance. A wish list for the holy of holies of big oil, big gas, big electric, big transportation and communications. Fast-track licensing has not a goddamn thing to do with helping Greece get back on its feet. Look at this memo. In line with the policy objectives, I read that one. No, I didn't. In line with the policy objectives of Law 3919/2011 on regulated professions, the government removes entry barriers to the taxis market. In line with international best practice, cab drivers, how fucking irrelevant is that? Not if your real goal is to destroy all public services, root and branch, I suppose. This is pure smash and grab, loot and pillage, more disgusting than any wastefulness or corruption from the Greek government. Gandhi once said that a people prefers its own bad government to that of an alien power, and that's what we have here. An occupation by men with pens instead of guns, as in 1941, but a blitzkrieg nevertheless. And the current Greek government is a nest of collaborationists, sellouts, and traitors just like Prime Minister Yanis Rallis, who deserve his same end, life imprisonment and death in jail. And that is not mere speculative analogy. The current Greek Prime Minister, Lucas Papademos, was former governor of the National Bank of Greece and president of Vice at the European Central Bank. Not even Rallis was an outright member of the Greek Fascist Party. But his predecessor, George Papandreou, was even more tragic, the son of Andreas, who at least ran when the Greek coup makers came for him in 1967 and attacked his house. At least he went out onto the roof, risking his neck. But just as George handed over his daddy, supposedly to save his life, to the rightist military junta, he delivered his whole country to the bank junta when it came crashing at the whole country. It was only by direct U.S. intervention that the junta didn't execute Papandreou the Elder. This time, the U.S. will gladly stand by and watch the national and financial execution of its NATO ally of the free world. We continue. Instead of pursuing tax cheats, the memo advises reducing the backlog of tax cases. Instead of operating within the law, it advocates streamlining the courts for efficiency and packing vacancies with recent graduates from the National School of Judges. Not veteran jurists, mind you, who might thus need a job with all the downsizing, but selected young brainwashees untouched by judicial thought crimes like democracy, human rights, or sovereignty. The MOU, or moo for a cow to be milked, is to turn Greece into a methane-rich carcass for corporate hyenas. Greece instead should have a radical restructuring, not another loan package. That's just another shovel of dirt to fill its grave. Greece must default and do it quickly, and then dig itself out of its grave. It must lead the way out of the Eurotomb. Or the financial SS-men in their blue banker uniforms will come for us and bury us all one by one. Uh-oh. Who's this on the YouTube line now? All right. Who? What? Stefanos Sarafis, Chief Military Officer of the Greek People's Liberation Army that fought German occupation in World War II? You say Greece needs to turn its back on the current regime and create another mountain government. What for? To intensify the struggle against the conquerors, for national liberation, for the consolidation of the independence and integrity of the country, and for the annihilation of domestic fascism and arbitrator formations. Well, I hear you, but it's hard to do that nowadays. That's why there's NATO. Instead, Greeks should do what the Egyptians did. Go into the streets and bring the state to their level. Turn the occupation the other way.